Friends, actually, this is the first time I see five people on the riverside room. Let's hope that technology helps us. And even though we are five people in the room, for those who are listening to us, for them this might sound like a panel. My friends, it's not. We want to make this as much like a campfire chat as possible. I would say that the type of conversation that we are looking for is like raw, curious, respectful, and hopefully a little uncomfortable. I remember that Josh asked me what's the goal of the conversation. I would say that the goal is kind of like to spark a real, honest conversation about the state of trail running. Not from a distance, but and I'm pretty sure that people will feel that right now we have the honor to have people inside the sport who care deeply about where the sport is going. Um, Starting first things first. For those who are listening to us and might not know who is Matt, Zoe, Josh, and David, let's start with like a short introduction. Who are you? And a small challenge. Um, if there's one word that you would use to describe how you feel about the sport right now, what word would it be? Okay, so right now, short intro and a word that describe how you feel about the sport right now. 3, 2, 1. Who wants to start?
Okay.
I'll go because
Yes.
I bet we'll if I get it out of the way first, I may steal someone else's one word. So I'll get mine out first. So David Callahan, I'm one of the co-CEOs of UltraSignup. For those who don't know, UltraSignup's sort of the trail running platform in the U.S. So we're home to most of the trail and ultra races in the U.S. Plus we have a media side of the company where we have newsletters, podcasts. Obviously, Zoe's one of the hosts of one of our podcasts. And then we do in-person sort of community events around the country. One word about the state of trail running is optimistic. So now all of you have to come up with another adjective. Yeah, that's what I figured.
So David, you are on my screen. I'm not sure if it's the same for you. You are on my left, and if we follow this order, Josh, you were next. So
Oh gosh.
yeah.
Okay. My name is Josh Rosenthal. I started Borderlands trail running. Just the idea of celebrating absolutely every runner. Started celebrating more back of the pack where I tend to live, but then just the mission is the heart of trail running and looking for the heart just anywhere it exists in any speed, any shape, any form that's out there. Just love to celebrate all of it. My diet sucks. I'm just going to get in front of Zoe on that one. I know it. I had like 5 croissants in the last 24 hours here in Paris.
Jesus.
Mostly almond croissants. And I started Wilder app recently. It's just I have a deep love for safety. Like I care about runners' safety. And I think when you run together, we're inherently more safe. And that's what the app is designed to do, is bring people together. One word for trail running for me is just like, this is really hard. So I'm trying to reduce it to one word. Mixed. Mixed is my one word.
Okay. I love it. Before passing the mic to Zoe, let me I know that I talked about your setup, but knowing that the image right now is a little bit like zoom out, my friend, you look like the godfather of trail running. Like the chair.
Me?
Yeah, like you are super centered. The chair, man, I love it. Seriously.
Well, that was
incredible
entirely
production design.
No,
I hired Matt and I said, Matt, I want to be the godfather of trail. What should I do? And it was like 3 hours, and this is what we came up with.
Jesus.
So thanks, Matt.
Hats off for that. Zoe, you're next.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that 5 croissants, most of which are almond, absolutely Zoe approved. That is breakfast goals. I'm Zoe Rome. I am a freelance journalist, podcast producer, and host. I co-host the Trailhead podcast with Brendan Littard over at UltraSignup, in addition to doing writing, editing, and some fun newsletter work over there with David. Thanks for letting me write about whatever the heck I want, boss. And in addition to that, I am also a freelance journalist, primarily focused on public land policy, and the environment and natural resources in the American West. And I host and produce the Your Diet Sucks podcast, which looks at the intersection of nutrition, science, food, and culture. We're big on croissants, big on carbohydrates. And I was the final editor in chief of Trail Runner magazine back when it was a magazine and it was about trail running. Rest in peace. But I would say my word, bear with me, is traffic. And what comes to mind for me is so often, it's the phrase like, don't complain about traffic, you are the traffic. And I feel like so often I hear people hand wringing about the culture of trail running. And what is it? It's us. We are it. Like we decide we are it. Don't complain about it. Be it.
My friends, we have our first teaser for the podcast. Zoe, you are the responsible for it. Jesus Christ. This was trail running philosophy. Don't complain about the traffic. We are the traffic. Jesus. Matt.
Yes. My name is Matt Trappe. I am a longtime photographer, director, creative storyteller in trail running and in running at large. Thanks for including me, Francisco. It's always a pleasure to chat with all of you. My sort of thought on where trail is at the moment is I'm going to say it's at a fork. And I guess we could talk about that maybe a bit. Maybe that's a bit of my topic to bring up. But yeah, I think it's at a fork in its growth. So.
Okay, so like a short summary, like from David was optimistic, Josh mixed, Zoe traffic, and Matt fork. And I'm pretty sure that you inspired that your word comes, and take into account that you were next to Zoe, and she's the host from on a podcast about food, and that's why you said fork. So you the inspiration came from.
I haven't eaten anything this morning. Maybe that's really where
That's
my
probably
mind
Like we started with croissants, then we moved to a food podcast, and Matt finished with fork. Matt, let's stick with you for the first question, my friends. Then
Okay.
after the answer from Matt, please just you don't need to answer to all the questions, so feel free to answer whatever you want. Taking into account that you talked about topic, you talked about the state of trail running. I would love to hear from all of you, like, in your opinion or personally, what's the whoop? We lost Matt. I hope that he's not angry with us, but let's continue with the conversation. Zoe, like, take into account that now hey, Matt, you're back. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm back. Sorry that
No
the
worries.
leave button is too close to the like mute button.
No worries.
I have done that. I have done that before.
Oh my God, it's all part of the party. So, and what I said is that I hope that you are not angry with us. So the question is, take into account that you brought up like the word topic, and you talked already about like this state of trail running. In your opinion, what's the current vibe of trail running? Would you say that the sport is in a good place? And if I had to add like this second layer to this question, is what excites you about the sport and what frustrates you more right now? Matt.
Is this to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I mean, yes, of course it's at a good place and it's not declining. I think it's growing. I think it's at a, just like an evolution, like in its life cycle right now, where I think it's growing to a point where, and this is why, I brought up fork. I think you're seeing like the sort of elite, like professional side of the sport, like kind of ready to accelerate to a level where we see other sports at that, really professionalizes it and really turns it into a high performance like endeavor. But then I also see like the real community side of the sport and the reasons people love running on the trail, also growing. And I think for the longest time, like trail running's been really great because all that has been, sort of one thing, like the elites, the people at the back of the pack, we're all kind of together cheering people on. And I say fork because I wonder how long that's going to continue without those two sort of sides of the sport, or those two maybe mentalities and takes on the sport, or we'll see those diverging going forward.
And based on that, obviously we don't have a crystal ball, but what excites you the most and what frustrates you the most right now?
I mean, the community really excites me the most.
I love
I was just at a race this past weekend, and you just leave feeling energized from it. That by far has always excited me the most about the sport. What frustrates me the most? I think outside of trail running, in the larger running sphere, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what trail running is all about. And I wish trail running as a whole, if you talked about the brand of trail running, I wish that was communicated at large a bit better.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. Anyone? So I can kind of like repeat the question. So like, in your opinion, what's the current vibe of trail running right now, and the sport as a whole? Do you think it's in a good place? Then the part B is what excites you right now and what frustrates you. Zoe, do you want to join the stage?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I will echo what Matt says, but I think with that growth, sometimes that narrative sort of offered as like a zero-sum proposition, right? And like, if we have big races, we can't also have grassroots races. And if we have something that's participatory, we can't also have something that serves the spectator. And if we have something that's big, it can't also like still maintain like its like soulful connection with people. And I reject that framework. We can absolutely have that. Like, we've been having it. And I think that so often it's more offered as this like zero sum either or, because that's a buzzier, more exciting narrative. Who's going to tune into a podcast where someone says it's fine, everything's fine, we're fine? And I do think that it does require intention in terms of how we steward the sport, but it is absolutely possible. We can celebrate, honor, and storytell around the back of the pack while pushing for the elite side of the sport to better serve its elite athletes. We can have these large race organizations that help sort of create a framework that helps the sport professionalize. At the same time, we can have small local events that get people hooked on trail running in the first place. And I think so often these things are posited as if it can be either or, and we have to choose, and it's like a battle for the soul of the sport. But it's a big tent, and we don't have to choose. And someone who's trying to make you choose is likely trying to sell you something, whether it's a narrative or a race entry. I would be skeptical of their motives there. And I think what frustrates me as like a somewhat old school journalist, I feel that the media has trended in a direction at large, right? Like, I sort of came from Trail Runner, which was acquired by Outside. And initially our mission was yes, tried to write things that were like fun and service oriented content, but we also did view our work as having like a watchdog capacity and trying to do journalism and go out in the world and interview people and check facts and get different opinions and perspectives on things and triangulate. And I feel that the media has evolved into a pretty fan service oriented proposition rather than having that sort of like healthy ecosystem of checks and balances. And again, I think there's room for everything, but I feel like it has sort of veered towards a slightly more sycophantic, navel-gazy perspective than one that's like, actually, let's take a critical look at this. Let's have this conversation. And that's because I think for better, it has become a really competitive ecosystem. And I believe that competition drives innovation and it drives having better conversations and a better product. But the downside of that is that I think it has sort of resulted in, like, rather than being a window, it's just sort of become a mirror for what we already are, echoing the same opinions back to ourselves rather than trying to maybe push things forward or even ask the tougher questions, which like isn't always going to be the thing that gets the most clicks or like drives the most likes and kudos, but I do still think it's important. And of course, that's my bias as a stodgy old legacy journalist showing, but I do think that there's a place for that. And I think that trail running, because of like how it has grown in tandem with how the media industry has evolved. We sort of like got pretty big pretty quick at the same time that the media industry was in some points collapsing and at some points innovating for better, but we don't really have as much of that watchdog capacity or like the thoughtful outside look as I would maybe want as a thoughtful consumer of news and media.
I like what you're saying. I don't know if you agree, but and this is obviously for everyone. When I think about trail running, and not only like on the racing point of view, but just using the term that Matt used before, like looking at trail running as a brand. I don't know if you agree with me, but what I feel is that when I think about trail running as a brand, the feel that I have is like, this, like something is missing. Like it's always like, oh, something is missing when I see like a big race being organized, or like a new product coming, or what. I don't know. Maybe I'm being unfair, but the feel that I have is like, okay, like yes, but because if I had to choose one word, is lack of.
That's not one word.
Sorry? No.
That's not one word.
Listen, hey, Francisco, when a
I'm not
Southerner's
great at math, but
when a Southerner's on it and you say one word, they're expecting one word.
If I have to use one word, is, well, it's difficult, but I don't know. It's like scattered. I look at the sport as something that it's like scattered, like it's everywhere. It's overwhelming. But thank you so much for your answer, Zoe, because that's like something is missing, because it's scattered. It's a sport that it's scattered. It's when you think about soccer, you think like something that it's straight to the point. But yeah, let's continue, Josh.
yeah, I mean, I've got just a little thought about that. It's you know, I have the privilege of talking to a lot of people around the world about the sport. It's sort of how I spend my time, which is sort of a great way to pass time. But I've had a lot of conversations with Dylan Bowman, right? And Dylan may be one of the more sort of conservative viewpoints on the state of the sport. I think he's expressed it before, right? He has this sort of fear that we're in a bubble, right? That trail running is growing and that it's all going to sort of deflate, and we're going to revert back to some prior state of the sport. But to me, you know, what I've shared with him and what I would also share with you based on what you just said is the moment that it doesn't feel like the answer is trail running is lacking this thing, then we've reached the end of the innovation of the sport, right? As long as people feel like there's something else that's missing, that's going to drive the innovation to push the sport forward. I think a lot of legacy sports, they reach a point where they can't figure out what the hell to do next, right? They've sort of done everything. They've maximized everything. They've optimized everything. And now they're trying to figure out, where do we go next? We're still at a point, for me, with all these conversations that I get to have, I hear interesting and unique experiments happening, ideas that are being built, Josh building Wilder, right? Like that, like we've not reached the end of people feeling like there's untapped potential in the sport. So I'm going to come to it. I'm going to build, I'm going to invest, I'm going to build a new race. I'm going to build a new app. I'm going to build a new timing solution. I'm going to figure out ways. I'm going to start a new run club. That to me is why I'm optimistic about trail, is because it feels like we do have this scatter shot that's happening with a lot of people trying a lot of things, and eventually there will be some coalescence around the best things, right? And to have this constellation of things being built, I think is really exciting, and it means that the sport has still got a lot of room to grow and to find its path forward. So I view that as a great thing to hear versus a point of frustration.
For sure.
So,
and knowing that your word is optimistic, what excites you the most, and what frustrates you? Knowing that maybe, just maybe, you are the privileged, comparing to the rest of us that you have many conversations with, like brands, podcasters, Dylan Bowman, and so on.
He's his own category.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What excites you the most, and what frustrates you the most right now in the sport?
Yeah, and what excites me is what we just talked about, right? The fact that there's still so many people that view opportunities for themselves to come be part of the sport, whether that's as an athlete, as a creator, as a race director, as a someone who wants to build the next running pack, or whatever it may be. There's an endless stream of people that are they're discovering trail running through some channel, whether that's through media or through being brought to a trail by a friend or whatever. And they're falling in love with the sport, and they're trying to figure out a way to marry their passion with their profession. And so they're investing their time, energy, and resources in the sport. That to me is really exciting. It's like we're in this mini incubator of ideas, and trail running is like the foundation of this incubation lab that's happening. So that's what excites me. What frustrates me the most, and Zoe sort of touched on this, like we are the culture, right? There's almost this perception that as soon as I come into the sport, I shut the door behind me, and like culture's locked forever, and nobody else that doesn't share the same culture as me is allowed. It's the craziest thing. Like we all came to the sport at some point, right? We all became part of the culture that was in place at that point. We all influenced the culture from that point forward. But I do get frustrated with people who say or feel as though the culture of the sport is being ruined by the new people that are coming, as though like they forget that they ruined somebody else's culture when they came. Right? There certainly was a culture of 30 years ago of we weren't carrying gels, we didn't have carbs, like liquid carbs, we didn't have GPS watches, we didn't have poles. There's evolution of the sport and the culture that I think people lose the perspective that it is constantly evolving, and that it is never stagnant. It is never going to be the same, even though their connections to the culture may be fixed. Like the culture that happens around them is never going to stop. So I get frustrated at times when I hear that. So
that reminds me of a question that I'd love to ask based on what you said. But before going there, Josh, what's your opinion on this? Like, what excites you? What excites you right now in the sport, and what frustrates you? And I would say, because I would guess that you could talk about something that you mentioned on our podcasts. But again, I don't want to guess. But yeah, what excites you the most? What frustrates you right now?
The thing that excites me and the thing that frustrates me, I mean, there's so many things. You see how fragmented my brain is as I just start talking out loud. But the thing that frustrates me is the thing that excites me to some degree, and that's the centralization that feels like happening in the sport. But I also wondered, did we centralize too fast? And what I mean is that, like, we already have our heroes. We have our Western states. We have our VIPA that's crushing it. We have our UTMB. And a lot of people have just kind of shown deference to that and said, hey, that's the cream of the crop. Those are the ones, the free trail and single track and, fill in the blank. No knock on them, but it's just like, hey, we're a young sport, and there's still room. Those can actually thrive. And there can be all sorts of other like sub communities within trail running. Okay. So one of the things that's hard is when we refer to it as trail running. What do we not like about trail running? Like what does that even mean? What is trail running? We could define that, but to some degree I think of it in the same way that I think about someone passed along this great book to me once called The Art of Forgiving. And it talked about like when you've been hurt and you need to forgive someone, like institutions, maybe you were hurt by an institution, but when it comes time to forgive, you can't forgive the institution. Someone in that institution pulled a lever that hurt you. And if you want to find like healing, you've got to find the person and forgive the person. And we don't have to go down that route, though. I love that conversation. For me, it's like, hey, I'll use David as the example. I know he could handle it. Hey, UltraSignup could never hurt me, but maybe David could do something that could hurt me. And so it's not UltraSignup that'd be the problem. UltraSignup they have fees and they have this and they have that. It's like you have these things, but so what is the thing? What's the boogeyman that is trail running? And I think to divorce ourselves from that and separate us from that and say the things that I don't like, it's not so much that trail running is a problem because I don't even know what that is. Is trail running what's happening when and who knows if it's accurate, but that report that came out said there's 14.8 million people who would strap on shoes and go on a trail once a month compared to the David, you'll know this exactly. I don't know if you can share it. The $250,000 a year that pay a registration fee to actually run a race. Is trail running races? Is trail running the 14 million people who have never heard of Free Trail Podcast, never heard of UltraSignup? And so on some levels, the frustration for me comes in is that where I'm ultimately going with this is that when it becomes gatekeeping in any way whatsoever, that in any way that says that the High Rocks people, the Nick Bears, the, you know, Max being with Satisfy and BPN, like anytime people start to have an opinion that says, hey, I don't like that's not that's not the framework of what I think trail running is. Well, like everybody's kind of bringing their own definition to the table. And what excites me is that centralization is how we're going to have the coolest, the best events. Western states, more elite. Like I want that to be the most elite of all the elite events in all of trail run. I mean, even more than UTMB, I'm an American, even though I live in France. Sorry, UTMB. I want to see Western states crush. I want to see them figure out a way through the Granite Chief Wilderness. I want to see them triple. I want to see 2,000 people run that race, you know? So my frustration is that anytime, in any way, anybody is limited from participating in the thing that they want to participate within trail running, because ultimately I want UltraSignup to make 10x the money. That's why.
Let's
I'm just
go.
kidding.
Oh,
I mean, I do.
you.
I want that for you. But I want, you know, if Western states had 100 more people, 200 more people, 400 more people, everybody comes up with that. And that's what I'm longing for, is like someone who has a strong desire to belong to an unhealthy extent. There's an element in which I can't belong to certain things, and I don't like that.
David, do you want to add something?
Do you want your revenue at 10x?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for us, there are certainly these concepts of gatekeeping, right? And I do think they exist. You know, obviously, there's been a lot of the frustration sort of toned down in the past 12 to 18 months or so, but there certainly was a lot of frustration with Ironman and UTMB back in 2020, 2021, 2022, as they sort of started rolling through their strategy for sort of walled off races. And I think most of the frustration came from that concept, right? It's like you're creating a gate, right? That this is the only path. You have to come through this gate to get to this destination. And I think it just frustrated people. For me, one of the things that's really exciting about trail, and I agree with you, Josh, like how we define trail. Like when you're talking to UltraSignup, we're talking about trail racing a lot, right? Because that's where we're most situated. But we talk to a small subset of the running community, like the trail running community, than the running community as a whole, just because people work through seasons of life where they're racing, right? And they may race for a couple of years, and they may, just use trail running as a hobby after that point. But one of the things I love about trail racing is like the sheer variety of options, right? So if you're a road runner, you get 4 distances pretty much, right? And that's it. And it's where can we find new, unique places to put 4 distances, which does create some real structural gatekeeping, right? Because not only are you gate kept from locations, but you're also gate kept with regard to distances that are sort of recognized as road racing. But for us, I mean, my God, like you find a patch of dirt and you can create sort of whatever you want, and you can fight your way away from the traditional gatekeeping. The challenge that most people face, and this is one of the reasons we sort of have the media arm structured the way that we do, which is we try and aggregate content and then distribute it. The biggest challenge most people have is distribution, right? You've come up with this great idea on this great trail that is unique, and to you think it's the coolest thing in the world. Well, how do you get that out, right? How do you get enough people to hear about it so that you can actually scale that event to whatever goals you have? The established, our top 10 race directors, Western States, Hard Rock, UTMB, all of those types of events, they've got distribution figured out. So their ability to scale their things happens much faster. So yes, like the grit and the grind that has to happen when you don't have distribution is a real challenge. And as the media world gets more fragmented, as we're going through this evolution of social media and trying to build social media channels, now we're going through a whole new shakeup right now with AI becoming sort of the default platform for search and discovery. All these things get harder and harder, but because the sport is still growing and still so diverse, I still think there's ways to avoid gatekeeping. right? To create something that's truly unique and special and serving the needs of a certain percentage of this community, if you can figure out distribution, right? If you can figure out how to get the message out, which I'm not saying is easy, but that I think for a lot of people is where great ideas end up sort of struggling and having a hard time thriving.
Would you say, and we can go back to Matt, would you say that, well, I will use the word problem, but quote unquote problem, would you say that one of the problems that the sport have, and I totally agree with Josh that it's difficult to say what trail running is, but all the question marks that we get talking about culture, talking about something that Zoe mentioned, which is like this is a sport that is super like grassroots, super like one of the main pillars. I would say it's like authenticity, and because of that, it's super diverse. Would you say that this problem or this clash between growth and authenticity is one of the reasons why it's super difficult to like, for example, to centralize the sport or to set like this clear strategy on this is how trail running is going to look in 5 years? Like, where do you feel there's a tension between growth and authenticity?
Well, it's the old versus new conversation we've had a little bit already. It's this has always been this way, so it needs to stay that way. And like for me, running in general, not even just trail running, it's such an expressive sport. I mean, it's like in a way for me, like using the word sport is even like very liberal description of it because it's just such a human expression of emotions and ups and downs, and it's art as much as sport for me. And so the ways that people can go about expressing themselves or connecting to running is it just goes far beyond what I think any other sport, especially like ball sports can provide. So the the more diverse the experiences, the more diverse the perspectives, I think that makes this sport really unique and really beautiful. So I think that rub comes from interpretations that it has to be this way and it can't be these other ways. And the more diversity we have, the merrier. I think also like kind of building on what everyone else was talking about, the perception outside of this sport is that it is old guard. There's very few women on the start line. It's not a diverse sport. But I know when we all go to races and we're in the community, we're in the events, it doesn't feel like that. Like it's a very welcoming place. And so that rub for me is how to overcome that perception that I think the sport has as it grows. And I would really like to see that change because once people come into the sport, they realize what a beautiful and accepting place I think it is.
Zoe, I would love to hear from you on do you believe that there's any part of the sport that we romanticize a lot against? Is there something that we don't talk much?
Yeah, I think even the concept of authenticity, which is a construct that we made up and often gets weaponized against people that we don't care to hear from or see on our start lines, Like 10 years ago, if you weren't a dude wearing no shirt and minimalist shoes, running with only a Gatorade hockey water bottle, you weren't authentic. And like, honestly, that hasn't changed much. And that is a decision that we make every day to propagate this fake ass version of authenticity because it suits our current needs and purposes. It's a story. We can change that story. We can just tell a different story tomorrow. What like authenticity isn't a real thing, particularly when you're thinking of like media and brands. Like there is a major element of performance here, whether people want to talk about it or acknowledge it or not. It is a thing that we constructed. That doesn't mean it's not like real, but we built it. We decide every day to wake up and continue this narrative, feed this narrative to the detriment of other narratives. And I think that telling different and better stories is one way to help more and more folks get into the sport. And I think there's a lot of like here on this call, I think you've been really intentional about picking out people who have really set out to try to tell different stories that help invite more people into the sport. But I think that we just have to acknowledge that it is a decision that we make, and we need to acknowledge, like, okay, who benefits from this decision that we just continue to make.
Hmm. Hmm. And
What was the second part of that question?
yeah, the
Not
second
sure if
part
I answered the
is there
secondary.
no. Is there any like part of the sport that we don't talk much or we don't talk enough? So on like on this, well, I was about to use that, like the negative or the part that we romanticize a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Now on the other side, is there something that we don't talk enough, we don't talk much, and we should?
Yeah, I think that sometimes we maybe over romanticize the idea of the trail running community as if it's just one thing. I think there are many and multiple overlapping and symbiotic communities. And oftentimes I think that we talk about it as if it's just a monolith, like it's just one thing and we're all listening to Free Trail and want to run UTMB and wear a cute little 5-panel hat. And there are different ways of engaging with this sport that are all as authentic and valid. And there are lots of people who, frankly, would be extremely bored by this conversation and are like bored by the whole idea of talking about community in racing and where the sport is headed, because they just want to go outside and vibe out in the forest. And I think that taking that part of the sport just as seriously as we take the pushing 120 grams of carbs an hour while wearing $400 bespoke carbon plate shoes running through the Granite Chief Wilderness at a 7:45-minute uphill mile, those things are kind of the same.
Are you following my Strava?
Shots fired at Josh.
I've never run a 7:45 mile, but I know everything else is me.
I'll add one other area that I think's romanticized, again, just because we sort of live it. It's in our name, right? I think the ultra distance gets romanticized, and there's this, we hear about it all the time. There's this perception that if you're not running ultra, like you're not really a trail runner, right? That there is this romanticization of the ultra distance, and it's like there's even a push of, well, 50K is not even an ultra, right? Like you got to get to the 50 mile before you can even enter into this club, right? The line keeps moving, but I think the sport should do more to sort of welcome people and embrace whatever they want to do on the trails, right? I mean, I tell people all the time, when you're road racing, there's an expectation that you're running, right? You're running this whole thing. And if you're not, like, you can feel the eyes of shame like fall down upon you if you're caught walking a road race, right? Like, come to trail, man. It is like you run to the next hill and you walk up it and you walk through the 8 stations. Like it's more of that, right? Whatever distance that may be, 5K, half marathon, whatever. But I do think there is, you saw it in Ironman, right? People would get into the sport for the sole purpose of going to race an Ironman. And once they did it, they would leave, right? I don't want to see that trend happen here, right? Is that people just tick off the box, get the bumper sticker on their car, and then leave the sport. And I think part of that is how we frame the narrative around what trail racing, trail running is. And I think
So
glorify. I mean, ultra definitely deserves its moment in the sun, right? It's unbelievable what people are doing, right? You look at Cocodona, people are racing 250 miles. Like, that is unbelievable. But there's a lot of other beautiful stuff that's happening that doesn't get as much coverage.
So what would you say?
Yeah, I think the moment I fell in love with the sport is when I realized at UTMB, when you pick up your bib, they give you a little card that you can safety pin to your vest that says, "Do not disturb, I'm sleeping." I was like, this is incredible.
That's for me.
This is the sport for me. People are like straight up eating charcuterie in a tent on a mountain and napping. This is elite athleticism. But to David's point, and this is actually one of the reasons I really wanted to work at UltraSignup, is because this interesting question / challenge was floated by me. And I want to make sure I get this correctly, David, that the majority of folks who do a race on UltraSignup only ever do one. And I wanted to solve for that delta of like, what do we do to keep people back? Because like, if we're already doing an okay job capturing folks, what are we messing up that isn't, and this is not like it's not what is UltraSignup messing up? What is every touch point of the trail experience? Where are we failing to serve these people? Obviously, totally valid if you run a 50K and you're like, this is not for me. I want to spend my Saturdays doing literally anything else. But I feel like that does indicate that there is something that we are not serving when it comes to the ultra runner, whether it's a part of the race experience, a part of the storytelling, or like service experience, like education. I would be curious what folks here think could solve that delta.
Yeah, like I would love to open this question to everyone. Like, what should we talk more or do more in order just for to answer to Zoe's question, which I believe it's kind of like the mission of UltraSignup. Matt, Josh, do you wanna, or David, do you wanna?
Let me throw out a question that layers on top of that, because it's what I've been talking a lot about on my podcast lately. And is there like a group, an identity group in terms of like people who are, you know, I think of the Nick Bears, I think of the, you know, the Satisfy crew, Soar Running, you know, those guys are just all freaking fast. You know, there's all of these different, so as it's grown, what I like about it is this decentralization into, you can specialize, you know, you can be a Satisfy guy, which Satisfy, it was bought by Chanel. I mean, that's who their main investor was Chanel. They just released that yesterday for the fun of it. But you can specialize in who you are within this sport. And so I just wonder, like, the thing that challenges me, and the question I have to ask myself is that, you know, as I come across this, because my goal is any gate that I'm allowed through that others aren't, I do my best to find a way to bring this idea to earth. And that is, how do I keep the door open so more people can come in? I'm not going to defer my spot into that door. I'm going to go through the door, and I'm going to see if I can hold it open for one more person, for a dozen more people. Are there any groups of people that are coming into trail that you wish were not?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a funny thing, right? Because like we become gatekeepers at that point, right?
Yes.
If I say there's any group I don't want here, there's some
it was
reason
a trap,
that,
actually.
yeah.
But maybe it's more of like a gut check of saying like, hey, we're seeing that happening. There's certain people that are like, I like, you know, everyone's welcome, but that thing is kind of, I don't like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I mean, there was, and this is a design to take it like to pull Iron Man through the mud, but there was a point in time, and I think this drove a lot of the frustration with Iron Man, where Iron Man just flat out came out and said, we came to trail running because we saw there was a lot of money to be made there, and we're here to make as much money as fast as we can. Right? That feels, I don't know, when you come into the sport, what cultural touchstone you were, but that just feels wrong to a lot of people. I don't care what industry you're in, right? If someone comes and says, I'm coming for your industry because I see a lot of money in it, that to me feels like, ugh. Now, you know, I think they've been better players in the space in the past year or so. They haven't stepped on a big break recently. So I'm giving them some grace, but that
It's
certainly
only May,
was a
David.
moment.
Yeah. Come on. We haven't even hit race season.
That was a moment where I felt like, oh, that's not the right reason to be here from my perspective.
Yeah.
So,
Francisco, if you want to talk about authenticity, I think what David just hit on is the definition that I like the most of it. It's just your motives, and if they're pure and whatever your point of view is, I think is accepted as long as you're just there for the right reason.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like the extractive sort of motive. Like whether you're a big company, like you're the Lululemon who's going to just dip in, throw one big party and then dip right back out, or you're a race conglomerate, or even if you're an athlete who just wants to go run Leadville, make your viral YouTube video and then get out. I think that our community deserves investment more than extraction. And if you're going to, like, in good faith, make an investment, like, you're going to mess some stuff up. That's okay. We're a weird bunch of folks. We get upset easily. We honestly don't have all that much going on. So if you do anything, it's going to be your 15 minutes of fame are going to be really tough. I'm so sorry. I apologize in advance. But if you make a good faith investment in this community, anything else, like, I'm open to, but I feel like there is this really extractive tendency of companies, people, brands to just come in, like, do an A/B test in the trail running community, and then the second they don't make quarter over quarter profit, they're out. And I'm pretty over that.
Hashtag trail running is not a trend, right?
Yeah.
But who are we to say you don't get, like, even if you guys are on the board of TrailCon, or you guys are, you know, you're at UltraSignup, you're in all these positions of recognized, let's say authority. I need a good word, like a place where your voices are being heard by the established trail running culture. who are we to say that Nick Bear coming into Leadville doing a documentary is net bad? And if so, what was the negative to that? You know, I've been working on my upper body. Okay, I've been working on my upper body.
I don't think that really.
Yeah, we can tell.
Protein
Start with
goals,
4 croissants a day. 4 croissants a day.
I've been working on I've been working on this section.
Yeah.
Again, I think any good faith investment, but if you're just here to get like the one bit of content, like that again, and like, you know, I think it's also valid if you show up, you do the one race, you make the video, and you maybe, like, again, in good faith decide it's not for you. But like, to the extent that I think some folks have noticed that our community will just like feel like flock to any amount of like attention or like scraps from like mainstream culture, I think that we deserve better. We deserve like true investment and true recognition.
So who is our community? You know what I mean? Like there's like this establishment thing that I'm hearing of, like saying, so who is it? And why do we get to have opinions on its behalf? You know what I'm saying? Like there's been people, because Dylan's not here, he's the easy one. I don't know him well enough, but whatever. Like say, okay, so Dylan is the figurehead for this sort of movement and what he's done with Free Trail. But why does anybody get to even have an opinion about who we are and who are we? Like, it's not even clear to me who we are. We are people who, what's awesome is that the Venn diagram of all of us crosses over on, we have an awesome time on trail. We also are trying to all figure out how to make money in trail. And so are we so virtuous that our attempt at making money is better than BPN's attempt to make money? And again, BPN, I don't know BPN for the life of me. We probably would have an awful time if we hung out. But, you know, like, why is our attempt at making money virtuous and their attempt at making money one that we aren't as stoked on?
It goes back to contributing.
are you
contributing or extracting? Like, that's a really good litmus test.
Yeah, and I think it also, you know, if making money is a byproduct of what you do versus making money is the way that I'm going to structure what I do, like those are the two things I think that are challenging, right? Which one is wagging the dog? And I think what you see a lot is that people, like, they see an evolving space, right? And it's interesting and it's highly affluent, and they feel like they say, we want to make money there. What can we do in that space to make money? That feels like the inverse way of saying, I want to do something for my community, and yeah, I've got to make money doing it. And I hope that I can find a way to make a lot of money doing it. Yeah. And so it's like, what are you leading with? Are you leading with the desire to make money and then you figure out some solution to go along with it? Or are you leading with something you want to do that you have to figure out a way to make money at?
Yeah. So how would you define like what's extracting in this sense that is a way that, you know, and let's go back to that, you as individuals, not you as the institution, but like to say, hey, what's extractive in a way that we aren't okay with? Or let's say we have to take away like I am not okay if this happens, because that's where, you know, that's the level that I think that this discussion, to me at least, is most material.
I'll tell you one thing that's funny, and this may be a misperception that a lot of people have, is someone like Nick Baird or David Gogggins, right? Yeah. There's a lot of old schoolers that like hate the fact that, like, how dare you come? How dare you run this race? How dare you like get all this attention for it? David Gogggins is still one of the number one searched people on UltraSignup, right?
Ooh, interesting.
He has contributed more interest in this space than, you know, most of our pro athletes in the space, right? Because he touches this demographic of people that our sport hasn't figured out how to talk to yet. And he has talked to them. And he has created this desire by that group to figure out what the hell is going on over here. Can I go do something that Gogggins does? And I'm sure Nick is doing the same thing. So while their sort of in and out experience with the sport may feel extractive, they actually are contributing a lot to the space, because they have this long tail of influence and this desire to live the Gogggins lifestyle that people like. They will find trail because they read his book. So that's one that I think like these influencers that are coming to the space and talking about the space, I actually think is good. Now you hope the people that they're bringing, their acolytes, right, are, you know, again, good members of the space, right? They don't litter on the trails. They don't, you know, they don't they don't cut course, like that sort of stuff, right? But they're bringing a whole new group of people to the space that we can't talk to easily.
I love
So
how you now I understand why you choose the word optimistic, because I really love the optimistic way you put into trail running. I totally understand what Josh is saying, because again, going back to the idea of culture, grassroots, if someone comes from out of the bubble, or outside of the box, and tries to come here just to extract and taking advantage of trail running becoming a trend. You were talking about Nick Bear and David Goggins. I saw yesterday, 2 days ago, a video from Matt Choi, that when we think about him, we think about like road running and some other stuff that he did. Now he's creating content on running long races, because maybe he's paying attention now to this trend of people going to run ultras or whatever. What I personally do is, I believe, just like David said, that um, in whatever they do, if they are just coming here to extract the value and taking advantage of the trend, at least they are doing something for the sport. And on the negative side of just taking advantage of the trend, well, negative quote unquote, it is what it is. I don't really care about that. At least I hope, or I expect that at least 1% of their doing, it's going to be positive for the sport. The rest, for me, it is what it is. I really don't care. I won't waste energy on that. They do what they do, and that's it. So I like the question, because again, just like Zoe said in the beginning, is like X or Y. It is what it is. So
Francisco, can I ask you a question?
of course.
Okay, so as I sit here, I'm a student of what's happening in trail running in Europe, and it's partially why I'm living here, is to learn more about it. I mean, what we're talking about is a uniquely American take on it, because we are dirt bags. I mean, really, it's the myth of the American West that's embodied in trail running, and that's why. I mean, my whole arm is tattooed with Western icons. Like, I love the American West. I love the myth of some of the things that it means. And I think ultra running is the perfect expression of the myth of the cowboy that I'm obsessed with. And that goes back in my family 6 generations, which feels like a lot. And then over here, I have a friend who's talking like 28 generations ago of, the house that he lives in has been in his family for that long. What are you seeing in Europe when you hear us talk about it, and versus what you have lived your whole life and being with Normal over here? How different are we? Like, I see races, like I ran a 50 miler here with 13,500 people casually going through the forest around Paris. It's so ingrained within everyday life here that that 5 people sitting around, it doesn't feel like they're talking like this. But also, I don't speak French well enough to know what they're saying to me.
I would say that in some aspects, like Europe versus United States, we are different. But I would say that in general, thinking about the trail runners, we are not that different. I totally agree with David that, like, if it happens the same where you run an ultra, all the others that don't run a ultra, like, F them, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, you are not doing like trail running properly. But because, like, there's this huge gap of the ones that run an ultra and that put on Strava that they ran like a 7 points. I don't remember exactly the numbers that Zoe used, but they brag about that, like the ones that run ultras and the others that don't. But one thing that I really, and I can tell you that, like, on in Normal and talking with Mike, it's super difficult for an European based brand to grow in the US. Like your mindset is totally different. The show is different. The marketing you do is different. The message that you need to pay for, like, the American public, is totally different than the one you shared on the European market. And so that's why I really feel that in some aspects we are exactly the same. But I believe that there's still a lot of, like, the path is too long for European based brands to become to succeed in the US, because US, like, it's a huge market. All the states are different from each other. The message is different. The marketing is different. You know how to organize the show. So that's why these are the obstacles that the European-based brand like Normal, these are the obstacles they need to overcome in order to succeed. That's why you, for example, if you come to Portugal or to Spain and talk about a brand like Topo, like what? What brand are you talking about? Like people don't know about Topo, you know? And even like you don't see many like ultras here. And there are stuff that happens in the US that you don't, and you know this, Josh, that you don't listen in Europe. Um, so I would say that looking to 100%, I would say that 10% we are similar, but the rest of 90% we are totally different.
Interesting.
Yeah, you touched on something that I share with European brands a lot. I mean, you reached the consensus yourself, but I hear from European brands all the time. How can we break into the U.S.? And I tell them, like, you've got to understand, like, there is no U.S. strategy, right? There is an East Coast strategy. There's a Northeast strategy. Like this, that's like saying, how do I break into the UK and Poland with the same strategy, right? It is so different. But I think there is this perception that we're just some big homogenous market, and we are really, really different once you start moving across the country.
It's like I would say that you have 52 strategies. Like you need to prepare 52 different strategies, and people expect.
Did something happen while I moved to Europe? Who are the other two?
We got Greenland, and we're about to get Canada.
Oh, we got Greenland and Puerto Rico. All right, I have not been paying attention.
It's been a tough few months.
That's actually why I'm here, is to be able to just not have to think about that stuff. Guys, you should come on over.
I can imagine,
I would say that brands expect to throw the rock on in the pounds and expect to. That's it. No. I know. Again, like just by talking with Mike, he was suffering. He was suffering, and you know this better than me. But now I understand more and more like how difficult it is to grow a brand coming from Europe in the US. It's difficult. It's a lifetime job. Before going to the and thank you so much for the question, Josh. Before going to the part of if you have prepared the question to ask to the others, but just trying to close on this topic of like the state of the sport and evolution. Do you believe that is like who or what is being left out of the current evolution of the sport? Is you think that there's like a media or brands, what or who you believe is being left out of the current evolution of the sport? And I will just throw the question and you can pick up the mic.
It's a great question. And here's why I think this is why it's taking me so long to answer, is because I think on some level, if you're industrious, there's a place for you in this sport. Your interest, like if you want it, it's there for you. At the same time, I hate that answer, but I don't know what else to say. But what I love about it is that, I mean, running an ultra, let's not conflate trail and ultra, but to say, if you're going to run an ultra, if you're going to run 50K or longer, that's crazy ambitious. That's not for everybody. If you want it, we are here for you, and we will cry with you every step of the way because we are so stoked and we know what it means to you. On the other hand, like those 14.2 million who have never signed up on UltraSignup for a race that are out there strapping on shoes and going for a run once a month on a trail, why are they not coming in? Like, is there something that we've done? Do you have to be too industrious, too entrepreneurial to find your way into the sport? And if so, that's a question that we actually need one of those big brands to help figure out, like have the budget to figure out a way to funnel more people in. So that's my thought.
Love it.
Yeah. I mean, I'll sort of scaffold off of that a bit, with the demise of Trail Runner, with the demise of a lot of the sort of traditional print media, those 14.2 million people, like they don't have a magazine at scale to pick up and sort of stay abreast of the sport. They've got a lot of beautiful niche magazines to pick up if they can find them. Right? Again, you got to have distribution. Right? Those niche magazines have to find those people. But I do think it's a shame that we are lacking a sort of generic sort of trail running piece of media content. Now it's fallen to those 14.2 million people to find the articles that were being served to them before. You've got to find them somewhere else, which I think is just a shame. Like finding good content is hard enough. Finding it in the morass of an ever-changing internet is even harder. So
yeah, so it's back to their industriousness. If they're entrepreneurially minded, they can find that good content. But to your point, it's not obvious, and I think that's a really great point you're making.
Shout out to the work that our friend Simon from Like the Wind is doing.
Yeah,
so
totally, and that's what I'm saying. It's hard for he'll tell you. He and I talked earlier this week. Like, how do I get more people to find my magazine? Right? How do I get more people? It's just hard, right? It's just you got to spend money to get through the Google ads, to get through the meta ads. You got to get it in people's, you got to get people to take the leap and sign up for it. It's a challenge, but I love the work they're doing.
And I think investment from the community, right? Like what is community? But I would say if we want to be treated with care by brands, companies, media organizations, then we have to reciprocate that investment. Because I think the failure of our community to invest in that type of media has led to exactly where we are today, right? Like, I definitely won't sit here and say that like trail runner and legacy media never made mistakes. Like, we definitely did. We didn't keep up with the marketplace in some really key ways. But I also think that there was sort of this like perception that this will always be here, whether or not I invest in it, whether or not I care to steward it or view myself as a stakeholder in it.
Matt, who you think is being left? Who or what is being left?
I think that particularly in the States, we speak entirely too much to only people who live in proximity to epic trails like I have here in Boulder. And I think there's a mentality and a psychological like sort of approach to trail running that differentiates it from other road running or track or other sports, that people that don't even live near trails could really attach or identify with. And I would like to see all those people kind of brought into the sport, even if they don't live next to a 14,000 foot ridge line.
Now, is there any topic or question that you'd like to ask to the other four guests of this conversation? So, Josh, I know that you talked a little bit about community, what's trail running, who are we to gatekeeping, but is there any other topic that you'd like to discuss or a question that you'd love to hear from the others?
Yeah, I mean, as I've been a little bit disconnected over here, the idea of like expatriate, which I've only been at for a year, but it's not that you have two homes, it's that you now feel like a stranger in two places. And one of the things I really miss is America, the dirtbag culture. Because again, the races, I ran the Eco Trail Paris, 13,500 runners spread across like 8 distances. Then I did a really small local race. I mean, it really was 2T2M, small local race with 3,300 runners. But it was billed as a yokel. France now has more trail races than road races. And then I ran Paris Marathon, which London couldn't be outdone. But to that point, 57,000 runners at the starting line of Paris Marathon. Am I over romanticizing it? I miss 100 people at the start line so much. And so I think maybe open question, or even to David, who sees the numbers, like that's what we love. When I can get over myself and say, okay, stop asking who's we, and I just accept I am part of trail running. That's the thing that if I were to not be careful, I want to gatekeep on the 100-person start line that is unique to, my ultras that I love.
Can I give you a suggestion?
Yeah.
You need to come to Portugal and to a specific place called Azores.
I've heard
David knows this guy, Mario.
That's what I'm talking about. I've got to find Mario on a street corner somewhere. He's got to take me to the trailhead. You need to find
Mario. I can do the intro like just right after this conversation, because in Azores he's responsible to organize 2 races there, and most of the races in all the distances you have like 100 to 200 people running in the middle of an island. So so
that's what I haven't tapped into that. But okay, in America though, are those alive and well, David? I guess it's probably a question to you because you have visibility.
Yeah, I mean they certainly are, and they forever will be, because we have a couple of embedded constraints that will force it. One is that, in most of Europe, trailheads are connected into city centers, right? Like
Yes.
you go to Chamonix, you sort of walk to the edge of town, and you find any number of trailheads that you can jump onto and sort of take you off for 100 miles into the wilderness. That largely does not exist in the U.S. outside of places like Boulder. Bentonville has increasingly done that, but most of the trailheads in our country are disconnected from city centers, and they involve a pretty small trailhead parking lot. Right, that's sort of the constraint of how we built our trail network in the U.S. And so the ability to have a 15,000 person trail event is it's just really hard to find outside of sort of ski resorts, right? Because they have the infrastructure to support it. And in those ski resorts, you can't really get to the ultra distance. You're not going to find 100 miles or anything like that. It's just so you've got those constraints. You've also then got land permitting constraints as well, right? That are, there's this real difference in the view of the public's right to access land that exists in Europe that doesn't quite exist here in the US. Like we really intentionally, from the beginning of the country, or early 1900s, when we started developing the national forests, put in there some constraints to protect the forest system from overuse, which now seems a bit excessive when we talk about it. I think people are beginning to realize that trail running is not that destructive on trails as maybe they believed before. But those two things in conjunction, I think, will forever keep the unique, bespoke feeling of trail racing in the U.S. And that's again one of the hardest things for European trail races to understand is, what do you mean you have a 100-person race? Like, how does that make sense? And what it creates is a real long tail of race directors, right? We have a lot of race directors who put on one race on their local trail that they love, that they have. I think the average in the US is 67 people at a trail race.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Across everything. That's the average.
I would say that in Portugal, what I feel is that harder the race, better to promote. And the number of participants at the end of the race is like this vanity metric. We got like 15,000 members running. Come on, just Jesus. Let's keep the authenticity. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, you think it's hard to run with 15,000 people in a road race? Like, imagine single file conga line for 50 miles on a trail race.
Yeah. And you're just never alone. And what I love about trail is that sometimes you're just alone for like hours, and here you're never alone.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. Anyone with a topic, or Matt, do you want to talk about the fork or any other topic?
I think we can if you want. I just think I see the professional side of sport like really taking off. Not a good thing, not a bad thing, but like for so long we've shared start lines with all the professional athletes, and they've really been part of the community. I really love that. I wonder how long that continues. I think you see road running, of course, is an example, but say like basketball, you have like small, like Rucker Park tournaments and games that are like kind of disconnected from, like, of course, the NBA and like the culture of the sport that's very, very far evolved beyond trail running has sort of, I don't know, split's a strong word because it implies like it's divisive, but it's just subcultures have really grown into be kind of their own things and their own interpretations of the sport. And I think we're coming to a place where the professional side will be more of its own subculture than it has historically been in the sport. And I wonder what you all think of that.
I'm never short on thoughts, but I also don't want to dominate the one thing that I believe is that once you begin on a path of growth, you better figure out a way to keep growth going, right? Because the inverse of growth is contraction, right? And contraction is really painful for a sport to go through. And you see this in triathlon. Like, triathlon had a real ascent, and then it had a moment where it couldn't continue, and then it had a decline. And what happens when you go through a decline is you lose a lot of entrepreneurs that were trying to build a career inside that space. A lot of content creators, a lot of unique brands. You lose athletes. Like the opposite of growth is not stasis. It's normally contraction. And so I hear this a lot of like, oh, the sport's growing too fast. It's like we just need to go back to the way things were. That those realities don't exist. You don't get to choose what level of growth you have or what level of. So once you're on the treadmill, you better figure out a way to stay on the treadmill. And so as the professionalization happens in the space, what we can expect to see is that it's going to continue, right? The trend is going to continue. There's going to be ways slowly for people to make more and more money in the space. And most often the reason that you have this disconnect between the spectators or the other participants in the pros becomes one of safety, right? Like they become celebrities, right? It becomes like, can you imagine Meb like having to be in the throngs of a marathon, right? It's just not safe for them anymore to have to do that. And I don't know how long it's going to take for us to get those type of professionals in our space where they actually have to be segregated because they'll just be inundated for autographs and photos and all of these things. I don't think we're within 5 years of that. I imagine we still got a pretty far growth curve to get to that point. But yeah, I think eventually we'll get there. Right? We'll have celebrities. I mean, I imagine it's hard for Killian and it's hard for Courtney at times to sort of navigate through the throngs of some of their races. You just multiply that times 10, and that's probably where we'll be eventually with some of our pros and elites. So
I think about it through the lens of like talent acquisition and like maintaining talent. And I feel like there's this sort of bizarre perspective where people are like so afraid of the sport becoming professionalized that we're pushing out some of the most talented folks. I think this is the same for the athletes as it is for like media and storytellers. I want folks to be able to earn a really good living working in this industry and working in this space. And I think so long that we like hold people's desire to professionalize against them, we are just kneecapping our sport. It's like essentially us demanding that we have middling, mediocre storytelling and that we have these unexciting like walking contests, and like we can have both. Like you can be fast and also like you can have the elite side of the sport and also have the participatory side. Like these things are not in conflict. And I think there's this sort of like idea that as soon as you're starting to make money off of it, that maybe it's inherently extractive. And I reject that framework. I think that there is room for professionalization as actually maybe being at the tip of the spear when it comes to stewarding the direction of the sport. And I think that goes for elites and pro athletes as much as it does for media and storytellers. And I want more money in the sport because I want better stories and I want better races.
Yeah. And it's, I always sort of get a kick, and Josh and I are both sort of back of the pack runners, I guess. I'm just, since he said that, I'll add on, right? The amount of time I get to spend with the elites during a race is pretty small, right? It's like, I get to see them disappear around the first turn, and that's sort of it. Zoe gets to spend more time with them than
when it's a morning start and they have headlights on, I can see them a mile ahead. Yeah, that's really cool.
So again, I think that is a little bit of this like utopian view of the sport, right? That we're out there running shoulder to shoulder with these pros and stuff. It's a lot of bye, see you later.
The only time that I had to run with a professional was last year when I was recording content for Normal, and I was running after Elozine during the Marathon de Mont Blanc.
Oh, dang!
And it was like this to end very, very bad, and it's on live. So I have this Spanish live covering. I was running on the left side of the trail behind Elocene, but then I was just passing this female runner. I don't know why, but I just like this, I felt that I was going to the floor, and if I did, it was going bad because I could just crash my head. And this is live. This was recorded live on Spanish television. So that's why I love just to go slow, and I don't care about the professional runners. They can just go do their thing, and I do mine. Let's start just to wrap up because I know that you have time. I only have two more questions, so one real question and the last one more like a funny one. If you could redesign trail running from scratch, A, what would you keep? B, what would you rebuild? And I'm saying redesign, but if you could just bring a change to the sport, what would you keep and what would you rebuild?
I don't know if anyone's ever taken the Berkman test. Anybody out there know the Berkman? I love these types of tests. So there's a change. You get a change score. Like, what's your need for change? Mine is literally on a scale of 1 to 99, 99. 99. And my wife is 94. And that's how we're able to just travel all the time and drag 3 kids around, because we just love change. To think about starting over, I'm keeping nothing. Like, how fun would it be to change everything? I don't know what it would be, but I want everything on the chopping block. I think that's just a blast to think about. But the first thing that I think, if we've got a, unlimited budget, is to solve live coverage. To me, building from the ground up, can we enter in with more polished live coverage? Because right now, 80% of the people watching Cocodona coverage would watch paint dry if it had to do with ultra running and be stoked. But my 8-year-old daughter comes in and says, "This is so boring." I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. Dad can't turn it off. Dad's not sleeping this week." To me, the dream would be live coverage that does justice to the sport in a way that an 8-year-old walks in and can't take her eyes off it.
Love it. Zoe, David, Matt.
I would maybe reconstruct our sort of like origin story, our mythology, which I sort of touching on what Josh mentioned earlier is so tied into, like, at least in the United States, which is where I operate, and I love racing in Europe because it's different, but in the US, our trail running culture is like very much tied into the myth of the American West, the myth of like rugged individualism and the cowboy. And I would just shake things up and maybe we pick anything else, something with a couple women, something, like just mixing it up, different stories, because those myths do inform who joins the sport today. And I would just be curious to see different people and maybe let go of some of that baggage that I think is holding our sport back. Like, it doesn't have to be this like sufferfest of rugged individualism. Like, this is something that like moms with kids and like families, like people are having fun doing this. Like, it's not like all pain and suffering and grit. Like, sure, like I'm not going to say it's suffer free, but I think we need a little bit of a PR update when it comes to like, not all of it is the David Gogggins of it all. Not all of us are running on femoral stress fractures. Some of us are having fun and making friends, and it's like a good time. Like there's a lot more people on the start line wearing like sequin freckles. So we're doing that now. And what would I keep? I would keep the growth trajectory. I think it's good. I think the fact that so many people are maybe nervous and hand-wringing has people like checking in with themselves and assessing their values and seeing how that's playing out in the sport. And I think that that's a place where we all should be, is like seeing like, how can I better live out my values through how I interact with this community, or how I individually interact with this sport, this activity, whatever we're calling it.
Matt, David.
And a Europeans' way of managing public lands. I want that. So from a permanent standpoint. Sorry, that was piggybacking off David and celebrating it.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, Josh, was I think
sorry.
the thing I'd love to change is just is the parameters around permitting and private land, and that sort of a perspective that we have that I think holds us back from bringing like I said, the mentality of trail running to more people that maybe don't have trail systems that are very friendly or conducive to the sport.
And I know that like no one wants to get political, but there have been recent developments in terms of the Trump administration updating the public lands rule, which is sort of the umbrella guideline for how we value public lands in the United States. And they have rolled back Biden era ways of understanding public lands, that like there was an intentional update to prioritize outdoor recreation. And the Trump administration is working to deprioritize outdoor recreation and reprioritize resource extraction and cattle grazing over outdoor recreation. And as stakeholders, I think that we have feedback for that. If we want to get nerdy about it, which it seems like we do.
David.
Yeah. The thing I'd keep is I really love the diversity of options that are, and again, I spend a lot of time talking about trail racing. Like, you literally can find anything you want to do on a trail if you just look hard enough, right? And so the ability for you to find the thing that really sort of that touches you uniquely is something that I think is really special, and I would like to keep that and see that growing. The thing I would change is I think we've had a lot of great brands that have come in and out of the space that just haven't found the right way to sustain. Like, Nike's a great example, right? If Nike had stayed in the sport through the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s and committed to trail running the way they committed to some of their other industry verticals, trail running would be a very different sport right now. And I think we could go back and try and imagine what that would have looked like. But there were a handful of brands like that were here that sort of felt like trail was on autopilot, and they went and focused on some other things, only to find out that it wasn't quite on autopilot for them. So I would change that. I'd find a path back to bring some of these legacy brands. Like, people don't realize Nike was here just about before anybody was, under the ACG badge, and then they lost focus. So I think that would be an interesting experiment.
Do you feel that there's like this American trail running, well, not versus, but I will use versus again. Do you think that there's this American trail running versus European trail running? And is there any way that Europe and America can work together using this like trail running as a whole? Because again, there are big differences between US and Europe in many ways. Is there any way to work together in the sport as a whole?
Nope.
Okay.
Next question.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things the sport lacks is some, and I know this is going to ruffle a lot of feathers, is some central organizing function, right? And ITRA doesn't do it. ATRA in the US doesn't really effectively do it. You look at mountain biking, right? They have IMBA, right? And IMBA serves as a centralizing force, good or bad, like it or hate it. But I think it helps create some connectivity to the sport globally to have an organizing body like that. It also gives brands a place to connect and figure out how to get connected into the sport. So I think we're going to have to see ITRA either assume that position, which I don't know that they can. I don't think it's something that ATRA's interested in, or you're going to have to see a new body be created. But anyway, that's just.
I see that Josh is not interested.
No, I think that it's hard just, and I think we celebrate this as well, that we are different. Like, let's celebrate that. But let's just say, so I'm painfully aware of it because as I'm entrenched here with other entrepreneurs, and none of them are in trail or all other industries. And one of the jokes is, because I'm one of the only Americans, is that one of the things that they admire about Americans in my program that I was a part of here a few years ago, and the people I've stayed friends with, is that we tend to move quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
So for Francisco, for example, and you probably all experienced this. If you've all heard from Francisco, he starts with, "Hey, how are you?" And you have that dialogue for a moment. And as the American, my email doesn't start with anything other than, "Can you do this?" And sometimes I don't even sign my name. And there's just this reality. So over here, I've heard it referred to as the tall poppy syndrome or something like that, where like if a poppy grows too tall, you cut that thing down. Like there's this difference in entrepreneurial attitudes, and inherent, and it feels like in the American way of doing anything is an entrepreneurship over here that's foreign to my at least my personal French and European friends. So I think the hard disconnect is the way that we tackle ambition, the amount of hours that we work in any given day, the way that we talk to each other, is all things that are just, we're uniquely American in that. And, I've been able to laugh about it over here as I've learned it. Cause at first they were like, "You're just such an asshole." And I'm like, "Help me why?" They're like, "Because you never ask how we're doing."
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, "I don't care how you're doing. That's why I don't ask." So I don't know. Francisco, am I circling the plane in the correct area? Like, do you feel that, is that part of how you would characterize the differences between us?
No, because I know that in some countries, the question "how are you" is not part of their dictionary, even in Europe. So that's not. I would say that that's not only like a characteristic from the Americans, because some people in Europe they also.
Really? Can you name names? Just kidding. No, please don't.
No. I prefer not to. I like to be friends with everyone, friends at least.
You're a nice guy.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, my friends, last question. This is like a funny challenge, and I will just give you some time to think about this. If you had if you had to start like this new trail running movement tomorrow, no rules, like most vibes driven, what would it be called? And what would be the first weird thing you would do to launch the movement? So number one,
Can you go first?
you would launch this new trail running movement tomorrow. What would it be called? And the first weird thing you would do to launch it?
Interesting. I think I need you to go first as an example.
So, okay, here's my pitch. There's a tradition of Japanese farming that I can't remember the specific name of, but it roughly translates to do nothing farming or do nothing gardening, wherein you just let land do its thing and you let it garden itself. I would propose do nothing trail running. What if we just hands off, let stuff grow? Just let it happen without like agonizing and doing all the hoeing and all of the hand wringing. What if we just let it go for a hot sec? We step back, we stop grafting narratives onto it, and we just see what happens. And it's called do nothing trail running.
My friends, the bar is high, so you need to.
I mean, I already do not. I have a version of do nothing trail running. I did a documentary about it, and where I got dead last in a 100-miler.
So we have already a new movement. Let's build 3 more.
Yeah, I'll have to give this one more thought. This is that's Zoe's an improv expert, so her ability to throw something out on the fly is a little unfair. she's too skilled at this. I'll have to give this one some thought.
Are we
advantage.
thinking of like? Are we thinking of an event or like the sport as a whole? Like what?
The sport
I guess
as a whole. Imagine that
the palette is too wide open. Without, I need some more parameters to be creative.
It's a movement. It's a movement. Like imagine that tomorrow you had to gather someone or like a group of people. You would need to give it a name, and just to launch it like this. Let's get the party starting. You had to launch this weird tactic strategy, but if it's weird, good. If it's smart, also good. I think that David just committed exactly the same mistake as Matt in the beginning.
No, he put something on his head. He had to jump.
He's got to go to call, I think. Yeah.
I mean,
I think that.
No, go
ahead, Josh. The cool thing about trail running is I think some of that exists already. I mean, you have like the backyard format. Like how wild and really insane is that? Where the last person standing sort of wins the race. So like that's kind of where my mind starts to run with things. Like maybe we don't allow nutrition and we see who goes the farthest so they fall over. I mean, maybe you have people. You decide a distance and people are allowed to cover it in any way that they can. I mean, I think the creativity of this, that's why I think trail running is so fun, is because it doesn't have as many parameters about what is correct, right? So that's where my head kind of goes. And I either have no ideas or I have a lot of very half-baked ideas.
Josh, just to close the conversation.
Yeah, I think about Matt's fork thing for me. Like I've been saying for a long time that I feel like what the elites are out there doing, it's a misnomer to call what they do trail running and to call what I do trail running. Like, so to give the elite version a different name, I mean, because it's a different sport. The thing that always hurts my personal running life the most is when I go too long between actually running a race and consuming a lot of the elite version of the sport. So I see Rachel and Dan crush Cocodona, and it's been a while. I could probably do that. Like I could probably be running that late in the race. Why do I not ever run? And I get so separated from it, and I realize I need to remember that is not what I'm doing. So I would love to have something that from day one, we have the elite version already separate. Get them out of here. get me away from them. They playing the same thing. Yeah, I'm bringing them down.
So, thank you so much for this conversation. Almost 90 minutes of trail running talk. It was super, super fun. I believe that we should do this at least once a month, or well, every 2 months. But above all, let me tell you that it's such an honor to that I had the chance to talk with all of you, and I'm super super grateful that you just gave us the time to share your ideas, bring your questions, and yeah, for me personally, it was an honor. Thank you so much for accepting the challenge and to talk about everything trail running. And I really hope that this conversation resonates with the ones that listen to it. And I really hope that this conversation might help some to and spark some new ideas to our sport. So from Portugal to wherever you are, I know that Josh is in Paris, Zoe and Matt, you are in the US. Thank you so much for your time. Let's keep in touch. Let's keep redefining trail running, and I wish you all a great week.
Thanks everyone.
Man.
Hope to see you
Thanks.
soon.
Ciao. Thank you.